So this is great. You know, this is kind of like a dream come true to have you all here and talk about procurement. Fabulous. So I'll just pick up something Frank said so well about this non-prescriptive procurement. He talked about this in the context of IT infrastructure and services. Let me talk about the potential of this in the hands of a mayor, in the hands of a city government, and the bigger vision of what happens when we actually build an agile delivery mechanism in cities to change things, to solve problems, what will happen there. So I will start with the common notion that, of course, you've heard many times. We've seen so many of the fellows present these endless procurement processes, these endless forms and decision-making flows and so forth. But actually, here's a guy, Plan B, if you like music, you will know him. But here's a guy that grew up in a very deprived neighborhood of London, a lot of problems, and he basically found that in all the critical moments when he needed government most, it failed. And the decision he took away from this is that government is just never going to solve my problems. He's given up hope. He's one of the many people who invest in social entrepreneurs that work around government rather than with government. So here's the challenge. 557,000 local governments in the world spending 10% of world GDP every year, with no other purpose than improving the lives of their citizens. We think this is an incredible resource, but also $4.5 trillion, for me at least, that's a figure I can't really make sense of. So I'll tell you a short story about how $4.5 million were spent in St. Paul's to help blind people. In St. Paul's, the city decided to do something for the blind, and they procured, in a very traditional way, an RFP. They procured speaking traffic lights. This is an off-the-shelf technology. You can specify it, standardized, and it basically is like an emergency system for the blind. You get lost on the street with your stick, you touch a traffic light, and it will tell you where you are. This is a use case, as those of you that have worked with blind people, that never actually occurs. Still, the blind people gave the mayor the White Cane Award for his commitment to the blind community, not because he solved their problem, but because he actually did something. He recognized that they exist and might have lives that could be improved. Now, exactly the same year, exactly the same time, Stockholm spent $4.5 million to help the blind. Here we have Boris on the right, who is a user of something called eAdept, which is a navigation aid for blind people. It enables them to have personal mobility. Boris talks about how he now feels 90% less disabled because he can go anywhere he likes. The city is set to save $20 million a year, the money that St. Paul's is going to spend. So how come that two cities with exactly the same knowledge, access to resources, come to such different outcomes? Well, in St. Paul's, they specified in an RFP a speaking traffic light. In Stockholm, they said, we want the best solution to help blind people become less disabled and independent and move around the city. And everything else then was building up on those two different objectives. So cities spend 10% of world GDP not publishing their problems. Any one of you, go to the websites of your hometown and look at where's the list of the problems the city is trying to solve with public spending. They have 3% market knowledge on average. And I say they, it's not really they, it's of course us, because how are you going to know all the things that happen in all the other places around the world? But procurement assumes that when you specify a solution you want to buy, you know all the outcomes. They don't trust new businesses, they can't process new ideas, and they only trust their informal contacts. They only trust the people they know. So very hard to break into as a startup. So the killer application, like the shared bicycle systems, now operating in 600 cities. That took them 45 years to get there. And 600 cities is a 0.1% market penetration. We just don't have the kind of Google or other types of scaling that should happen across communities. So we at Citymart, we don't want to accept that we can just live with that waste, that we're not using the world's largest fund to improve the lives of citizens. So we're trying to do something about that by supporting City both in building the innovation capacity for change, for internal change, and between each other, benchmark and share the best processes that works, because no one has a recipe on how all of this should be done. And on the other hand, we open them up to market responses that enable them to transform their lives. And here's the big idea. Cities have to become change leaders. They must open up their problems, because when you open your problem, you can create that transformative opportunity for startups, for innovators, for new solutions of all walks of life. And cities say to us that they see 10 times as many approaches to solving their problems, and they save 80% of their spending by doing this. It is really an economic as well as a social value proposition. So we take them through a process of publishing the problems and working together across cities with the same methodology on delivering this. So one last thing as I conclude this, we create a new landscape of needs, because cities start to tell you what they want and what they want to spend their money on in the future. We create a universe of innovations that cities can explore and discover and share. And really importantly, and I'll leave just with this, this is just a visualization of cities on the left that have problems and the other cities in the world that they source the solutions from. It is simply not true that we have to reinvent the wheel in every community, but cities can share the best technologies and solutions across the board. I leave it here. Thank you.